Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be talking about this kind of podcast that I just watched, a live stream, I guess you could say, with Reed Havens and two other people. And I just want to say I don't make a lot of reaction content, and and I'm not here to start any kind of beef or anything like that. I like Reed a lot. I like the stuff he does. I don't really know the other two at all. So I'm not here to like stir the pot, much, I guess you could say. But this is something I really wanted to participate in when I saw this come across my feed. Unfortunately, I was double booked and triple booked with meetings because I have a job, right? So, you know, but I wanted to, I got a chance to watch this afterwards, and I just got to say it's just lame. Okay, it's my honest reaction to it is just so very lame. And I feel compelled to like talk about it. I probably piss some people off and things like that, but too bad. So the first thing I want to say about this video. So this video says it's the hot take, right? Yes, Power BI belongs with Fabric. Fight us with about it. Blah blah blah. And the first thing I want to say is the fact that this video exists in the first place, I think is pretty damning for Microsoft Fabric, right? Either Microsoft has sent out the distress signal to all the MVP marketing shills that are out there, right? Or the MVPs, they just inherently know that things are so bad for Fabric that they feel compelled to make content like this, right? I think, it speaks volumes that this exists at all. Because if Fabric was winning, right, then you wouldn't have this kind of content. Okay, so that's number one. And then this thing was billed as like a debate, right? And oh, come fight us about it. And if you read the description, they're like, oh, we're gonna settle this debate, once and for all, and all this other stuff, right? But this was just three dudes, two Microsoft MVPs and one wannabe Microsoft MVP, right? Just in an echo chamber, like patting each other on the back and just agreeing with one another. And there's a particular euphemism that describes exactly like what was going on in this video, but I cannot use that euphemism on a family-friendly channel, so I'm not gonna say what that is, but it describes it perfectly. What this video is. So anyway, but there's no if you can't have a debate if there's nobody providing the counterpoints, right? They have some lame counterpoints that they came up with and they don't even defend them very well. They're just kind of like, oh, here's what people say. There's nobody arguing the other side of this, right? So it's just three dudes, Microsoft marketing shows, right? To some degree, right? Because they all are, right? All the MVPs, right? I mean, some more than others, right? And I think Reed's one of the good ones in general. But yeah, it's just there's just no real debate about anything. There's nobody providing the counterpoints and the counterpunches. There's just none of that. So you can't call it a debate, okay? And there were only like 8 people that watched this thing when it was live. I was one of them, so 7 other people. And then the other thing that in the description again, we'll break down why Power BI and Fabric aren't just compatible; they're inseparable. It's like I feel like was it Princess Bride? It's like, do you even know what the meaning of that word is? Right? The fact that Synapse and Power BI were separate for a decade, right? Obviously, they're separable, and they you will get into it, but in their counter arguments themselves, they're they're even saying that yeah, they're separable, right? There's no reason for these two things to belong to if you don't need to use Fabric, just don't use it. Well, then it's separable, like by definition. All right, so anyway, so there's all these problems with it, right? Um, so anyway, and it takes them like 20 minutes to even get into like it's just all like blah blah blah. And finally it takes them like 20 minutes into this to get into any kind of what the actual thing is about that they're supposed to be talking about. Right. So what I did was I took some screenshots to make it a little easier. Here's the abstract, right? Microsoft Fabric is redefining the modern data ecosystem, right? Ecosystem, however you want to pronounce it. But see, right off the bat, right, it's just sad and wrong and lame because that's not what Fabric is doing. Fabric is not doing anything of the sort. If anything, Fabric like barely maybe caught up to where everybody else is, the IBMs, the Oracles of the world, right? Your Snowflakes, your Databricks, and AtScales, right? They sort of caught up, I would say. I would say it's really hard pressed to say that they pulled ahead, because they really haven't. So, but anyway, they're like, oh, it's a modern data ecosystem, right? They're redefining what a lake house is and where, how, because that's stuff's been around for years, people. So there's nobody challenging them in on any of these stupid statements that they're making, within this. It's just dumb. So it's all just marketing shill speak and means nothing. Okay, so there's problem right there, even with the abstract. Then they go to this slide, and they're like, oh, look, this is Power BI growth or something over the last 8 years, and somewhere in here, like Fabric, they make the argument like, well, somewhere in here, Microsoft released Fabric, and if Fabric was such a debacle, you'd expect to see this drop off in Power BI, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, that's the stupidest logical argument ever. That doesn't even make any logical sense whatsoever, because Fabric really, because Power BI exists outside of Fabric. Okay, it always has, right? And just because you bolted something on to Power BI and you have these additional options over here, why would that affect Power BI and the people that use Power BI and don't give a crap about Fabric? Right? Of course, they're going to keep using it if they like it, right? So the logical argument in this section is just terrible. Okay, it's just bad. Okay, so then they actually get into like point counterpoints, right? So the point that this one is responding to is that there's a steep learning curve, and I've made this argument, right? It's like you're trying to take business people, right? That okay, they figured out a little bit of data modeling and maybe a little bit of DAX, right? And they built their reports, and and now you're trying to teach them Python code. It's the most ridiculous thing. So, and they're like, well, and so their counterpoint is, well, Fabric is an open gateway to data engineering tools. It doesn't force traditional Power BI users to adopt Fabric features. Well, then they're separable. You're making the argument. You're arguing. Maybe it is a debate. They're arguing with themselves. They're like, well, Fabric is inseparable from Power BI, but it's not, because it is separable because you don't need to use it. It's like, it's just so bad, right? So that's just terrible. It's a terrible argument that they make. All right, so on to point 4. Like, this was responding to, there's a high cost to Power BI or to Fabric, right? And I did, you'll notice these. I tried to capture the little time, stamps on here. The problem is I was watching the live stream, and so this is like time to from end versus now that it's live. It's this would be like the reverse number. So anyway, sorry about that, but you'll have to find these on your own. But like again, it's just Fabric features are available at a minimum SKU level, but here's the thing: they never address why people feel that Fabric is overpriced, right? Because it's capacity SKU based, right? Which is inherently going to make you pay more. Like, I've explained this ad nauseum on my channel, and other people have done it in blog articles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They never address the core issue. They never address the core issue that Fabric double charges you for stuff, right? They charge you a premium if you stop your reserve capacity, right? And they basically double charge you for, and it's not just double. It's like, it's like 1.5, it's like 2.5 times more, whatever it is, right? They just charge you an exorbitant amount just because you stopped your reserve capacity and restarted it or something like that. When you clear out your debt, which they always keep you in debt, right? I've explained all of this in my previous videos and that, right? Fabric is designed to keep you in debt and you never get out of it, right? That's how they've designed the system. Which is smart from Microsoft's perspective, but it's not anywhere near like pay it for what you use like Synapse was, which was a great pricing model, right, for customers. So, and then they get on this kick about no more AE and P SKUs. Well, it's an EM SKU for one, and they still exist. A SKUs and EM SKUs still exist. The only one that's gone is the P SKU, people. So it's just factually incorrect. There are actually A SKUs and EM SKUs, and I'd have to run the pricing analysis, but I have a feeling that an A SKU is probably like cheaper than a Fabric SKU as far as your, computation, your CUs and things like that. I'll have to get back. Don't quote me on that one. I'll have to get back on that one. I was supposed to research that before I did this, but too bad. All right. So just factually incorrect information that's going on, right? And then that's the last one here. This one is a matter of, this one is that there's gate-kept features, right? So Copilot and GitHub integration. And they're like, well, that's always been the case because you had Power BI Premium. And now, and then you had Pro, and then, certain features are available for Premium and not Pro. That's why we had PPU, people, right? They never mention it, right? That's why PPU existed, right? There's no equivalent in the Fabric, licensing structure for a fabric PPU, right? Premium per user or fabric per user SKU. So it doesn't exist, and it's worse under fabric, right? It's far worse under fabric because not only because let's talk about Copilot for a second, and they never get into this in the video. They just don't address the actual things that people don't like about fabric and why they want the two separated out, right? Because Copilot, right? It's not only just not only available in Fabric. You have to have a reserved 64 plus capacity. So an F64 plus reserved capacity to get Copilot. Okay, it's not just like, well, if you get an F2, or even if you get an F64 and do pay as you go, you still don't get Copilot. Okay, that is what people complain about. So basically, if I could get an F64 and just, use it, turn it on, test out Copilot and tinker around with it and kick the tires on it, right? That'd be one thing, right? But no, you have to commit to basically 60,000 a year, right? 60 grand right up front to even get to try out Copilot, right? That's stupid. Okay, and that's what people are complaining about. But they address none of this stuff. None of this stuff. There's just no debate at all, right? In terms of and here's why I see, like, they're saying it's inseparable. It's like it's not, right? Not just the same way that Teams wasn't inseparable from Microsoft 365 licensing because the EU sued their asses and got it taken out, which is a big pain, to be honest, in terms of the licensing and stuff like that. Like as a reseller, a CSP, that's a real pain in the butt. But I could see the same thing happening with Fabric. There's nothing that says these two products, Power BI and Fabric, have to be conjoined. It is a complete fabrication by Microsoft that they are been stitched together, right? So none of these points are made, right? I mean, they just know there's just the intellectual dishonesty that is displayed in this live stream is mind-boggling to me, right? So that's why I felt compelled to make this video because it's so egregious, right? So anyway, if maybe wants to have a real debate about this stuff, come find me, okay? You can find me on LinkedIn, man. I'm available anytime. But I doubt if anybody, wants to have a real debate with me about this. So that's all I had to this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.